1899 Season 1 has just released on Netflix, and the first season of Baran Odar and Jantje Friese's new show is set up to be just as mind-bending and impactful as their work on Dark. The first season posed a lot of questions around introspection, reality as a whole, and the mysteries of what's to come, but it did also give us big answers surrounding the construct in which these episodes took place in. In this explained analysis, I'm going to be giving you my breakdown of 1899 on Netflix, discussing what it all means for the plot as we move towards a potential season 2. Before I get into it though, if you want to see more videos on 1899 over the next week, including a video essay and other breakdown videos, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into my explained video for 1899 Season 1. So Jantje Friese and Baran Odar were the German creative duo that blew us away with Netflix's Dark, and now they've introduced us to a brand new show in 1899, which has turned out to be even more complex than the previous hit series. Of course, Dark played with time travel and made us question whether time as a concept was a loop or linear, whereas 1899 takes similar ideas and this time applies them to simulations. It was a crazy experience watching this show, to say the least, not going the easy route with its viewers, and I have to say, I really appreciate what the German filmmaking pair have done not once but now twice. The series begins with a ship named the Kerberos making its journey to America from Europe, and on board the ship is a multicultural group of passengers. It's a multilingual show that makes it difficult for the audience and the characters involved to really understand what people truly mean based on their cultural differences, but we do get a good idea of what is distinct about all the characters involved. The main person we follow is a British woman named Maura Franklin, who we learn has studied medicine, with the brain being her speciality. She initially finds herself restrained in a mental institution during the opening flashback scene where she's screaming at her father about what he's doing to the people on the ship. And once she wakes up on board the Kerberos, we get an early hint towards something not being quite right with this particular location. Maura tells us in a voiceover while reading the letter that a lot of the main characters received that the year is 1899 as a correction to nearly saying that the year begins in the 19th century. This instantly got me thinking that they are either playing with time again or signalling to the audience that things are not as they currently seem. And if we add the multiple room number changes and details like us never seeing the passengers get onto the ship to begin with, it's quite understandable to learn that they are trapped inside a simulation. But I'll touch more on that as we reach the back part of this breakdown. Coming back to the characters, after getting introduced to Maura, we get our first look at all the other key players on this voyage. While a lot of the crew are German, alongside the captain Eek Larsen, played by Dark actor Andreas Pietschmann, there's a group of Danish people in third class who are religious, 2 Spanish passengers in Angel and Ramiro, and Virginia Wilson, a lone wealthy British woman who knows 2 Chinese characters in Ling Yi and her mother Yuk Ji. There's further a newly married French couple, Lucien and Clemence, who don't seem very joyful in their marriage, and the focus within the Danish group down below is mainly placed on Anker, Iben, and their children Tove, Cresta, and Ada. Not to mention that in the lower levels of the ship, we get a smaller focus on the stoker Oleg, Franz, the captain's first mate, and a stowaway named Jerome, who is searching for someone on the ship. So once we get an introduction from each of these characters and learn that they've all come from equally troubled pasts to get here, may I say that the creators did a wonderful job of really balancing the screen time between them throughout and really setting up the mystery at play. The show builds towards the back part of the opening episode, which gives us the main hook for the plot, with the ship's crew getting a message of coordinates, making them believe that this is coming from a ship named the Prometheus, which went missing around 4 months ago. Eek, the captain, decides to turn the Kerberos around to investigate what could have sent these coordinates and whether it could mean that someone is still alive on that ship, even though this would be almost impossible because the crew would have had to ration the food and many would have already died from starvation. And when it comes to the people on the Kerberos, they begin to get extremely frustrated towards the decision from the captain, especially the wealthy above and the Danish below, who have either paid good money to get to America or seeked this opportunity to make it to the promised land after their supposedly painful past. The Kerberos does reach the site of the Prometheus, and Eek ends up taking a small team including Maura because she could help if someone's alive, and when they do board the ship, they find that the communication device used to send the messages is completely broken and that the ship is all but empty. That's until they find a small boy locked in a cupboard holding a small black pyramid, leaving Eek and his team in utter confusion. And not to mention that while they are on board the Prometheus, a mysterious man sneaks onto the Kerberos, and this is none other than the character Daniel, played by Anorim Bernard from Dunkirk. From this moment onwards, things start to get really weird, and a lot of these mentioned characters go through a stage of questioning that very voyage they are on. When they bring the boy back from the Kerberos, the ship's navigation stops working, and individual characters start experiencing tragic memories of their past, and ones that feel more lifelike than the moments that they are currently experiencing on board the Kerberos. We learn a lot about their secrets, what they are running away from, and why it may be coming back to challenge them in the supposed reality they think they are currently in. While this does go down, the Kerberos gets another message from the shipping company that apparently owns both ships, saying that they should sink the Prometheus, but the captain decides that they should tow it back to Europe, especially after the weird circumstance with finding the boy alive, and the visions that Eek personally experiences surrounding his dead family, which again are practically impossible. People on board are already unhappy about this decision after what they've sacrificed to get on the ship, but to dramatically increase the tension on board, people begin dropping dead with no signs of damage or wounding to the passengers. With Eek wanting to continue backwards, the crew start to blame him and conspire to take over, especially with them knowing that the captain is an alcoholic and that he may be crazy due to his past experience of watching his wife and kids be killed in a house fire prior to the voyage. And while this conflict is brewing, Maura is trying to learn from the boy about what happened on the other ship, but the child doesn't even say a word. Also, the stranger who I mentioned before, who sneaked onto the Kerberos, introduces himself to Maura as Daniel Solace, and we know right from the get-go that something mysterious is going on with his character, especially when we learn that he takes over a room right next to Maura's on the ship, and he unlocks the door via a green bug that crawls underneath it. The captain also follows one of these during a memory, eventually leading him through a chamber and back out through a panel in his room's flooring. Maura herself had a similar experience, but it feels like they can't get anywhere if they don't get the information they need from the boy. And we know they are against time too, especially when a mutiny breaks out on the ship, following the escalation towards the captain turning around with the Prometheus in tow. Half the people on board believe it is cursed, plus a group of men and the Danish from below who take things into their own hands. They decide that they want to do something about the situation and that the boy could be the reason for all the sudden deaths, and this especially connects to the Danish because Ava was one of those who had a sudden death. We did see her come in contact with Daniel and she spotted him using that mysterious bug from before prior to her being killed. So it makes the Danish family have their suspicions not only about the captain and the rich, but in the case of the mother, Iben, the involvement of the devil because of them being very religious. They see the innocent-looking boy as a distraction from what he truly is, so once they decide to pact together, the mob of mutineers search the ship for the child. While they struggle to do so, they do eventually find the boy, and Iben throws him overboard during a fight that breaks out on the decks, thinking that this will end all of the weird things happening to them that begun when they first came in contact with the Prometheus. The captain, Maura, and the passengers on the other side of things eventually defend their way to the ballroom and try to figure out what they are going to do next, and while they are here, this is where the boy reappears in a cabinet similar to the one he was found on in the Prometheus. This shocks everyone, and one of the men in the room tries to shoot him after witnessing what he did, resulting in the mysterious Daniel character coming into a greater focus. He uses a device to completely freeze time, allowing Maura to take the boy to safety. The device he used had a lot of buttons with the triangle symbols we've seen on many objects and clothing in this show, whether it's Ling Yi's robe, Virginia Wilson's earrings, or the boy's pyramid device, which has a keyhole on the inside and reads "Wake Up" on the lid. We learn that Daniel's device allows him to control the ship in extreme ways, and one of those ways includes him transporting the Kerberos away from the Prometheus and putting it back on its original line of travel. But the chaos has only just begun on board, because we soon witness that a weird sound triggers most of the people on the ship into a controlled state, where they begin walking to the decks and jumping off the ship to commit suicide. While this takes place, Maura and Eek begin investigating the hidden chambers in each of their rooms, and we learn that many of the rooms have these chambers as an access point to places in each of the individual characters' memories. Think of it as their cornerstones, if you will, or physically appearing locations that tie back to the painful moments that each of them remember. For instance, the captain's one is the location where his wife and kids died in the house fire, and Maura's is the mental facility that housed her and focused on the moment where her father was presumably testing on her. None of it seems truly possible to even exist within the flooring of a steamship, let alone being able to access them using those creepy bugs from before, and Maura herself believes that there is something quite fake about their current situation. It leads her to thinking that her father, who is obsessed with the human mind, is responsible for what's essentially happening. And this is where the reveal surrounding what is truly happening begins to unfold. Daniel makes his way to the location of Maura and Eek, which is through Maura's tunnel at the mental facility construct, and he reveals to Maura that he's actually her husband and that their child is called Elliot, the boy that was found on the Prometheus. He tells her that she is in a simulation and her father, Henry, is after a key that will help them escape. Apparently, Maura hid the key and then made herself forget, but now she has to remember where it is. Daniel sends the captain back to the Prometheus, which is surrounded by other similar looking Prometheus ships now, and is where everyone else is currently fighting for survival. Of course, many of them don't know that they are actually inside of a simulation, so the question of whether any of this matters isn't on their minds as centrally as it is on Maura's. But another thing that is soon a problem for her is that Maura's father, played by Game of Thrones actor Anton Lesser, has found Elliot and has also got his hands on the pyramid device, which he thinks is the override for the simulation. So all he needs is the key, and obviously Daniel is trying to make Maura remember what that actually is. He also tells Maura a bit more about what he's trying to do and why he's really here, saying that the simulation runs on a loop, and each time the loop ends, they go into an archive. Of course, we learn that he modifies the code using one of the big devices on the ship so that they will go into the archive and be able to go against the traditional repeated loop. And he even mentions to Maura about the idea of Plato's cave when revealing the simulation to her, and this is something that really stood out to me personally, because while I was at university, me and a friend were really hooked on the idea of telling a complex story about the allegory of the cave, and this definitely appears to be the central idea of this first season. Plato's cave story is one that describes a group of people who have been chained to the wall of a cave their whole lives, and they watch shadows projected on the wall from objects passing in front of a fire behind them. They give these shadows names, and we learn that this is actually the prisoner's reality, and it's essentially not an accurate view of the real world. It's only a fragment of what reality truly is, and the people who've lived chained to the cave can't quite fully understand that because they haven't had the full perspective. So that story on Plato's cave is truly what we are seeing happen throughout season 1 of 1899, and watching this represented not just through the plot, but also in a visual sense when characters come out of the tunnels or rip apart the electronic boards that create a perception of a real location, is really fascinating to view. It really is a great look at a modern day Truman Show, but more complex, twisted and detailed in a way that I really appreciate. Coming back to the events though, it's not long before we start to get all the other reveals, and many of them come through Maura's father, Henry Singleton. Henry reveals to Elliot that his mother has been hiding the truth from him, and he wants to show him what that is. He takes him to the same mental institution that is seen in Maura's memories, and makes him sit on the chair that she was strapped to. He injects him with a liquid, and Elliot begins to see a past memory, one where Maura is preparing to inject her son in the exact same location. Henry tells Elliot that he was dying and that Maura and Daniel built this simulation for him so that she could never be separated from her son. Elliot doesn't want to believe that this is true, but it becomes clear to us that the creator wasn't Henry, and in fact, it was actually Maura herself. This is where we come to the archive mode that Daniel had modified so that the passengers wouldn't be sent back on their loops. Those passengers come in contact with a black substance that grows within the walls of the ship, forming the structure of the simulation, and Maura tries to tell those who remain, consisting of Eek, Virginia, Ling Yi, Jerome, Clements, Ramiro, and Tove, that they are all in a simulation. Virginia herself has been corrupted by the black substance already, and none of the others currently believe Maura and her claims. They decide that their best chance now would be to get off the ship, which we know is impossible. And when they try to, this results in them getting lost, and the substance continues to grow, virtually confining them in the corridors with no way out. Meanwhile, Henry still wants to obtain the key from Maura, and after Daniel finds out that she had the key the whole time, he asks her to keep it safe. But as Henry has Elliot, he uses the child to his advantage, eventually getting the key back so that he can get out of the simulation himself. Franz has been working for Henry since the beginning, and he is the one to get the key from Maura, take her to her father, and kill Eek while doing so, using the same device that Daniel used on Ava earlier on in the series. But while they capture Maura and the key, Daniel manages to get into the mainframe of the simulation so that he can alter the code. This is why the other passengers who were trapped in the corridors of the ship keep getting lost through the different doors that form the basis of their memories. He essentially changes the code to a point where the simulation understands that the code has been corrupted, and this begins to form the deletion process of it so that there will be no more loops of this 1899 story. The plan is to make Maura remember so that she can free herself and stop the repeated simulation from trapping them there. And this brings us to the complex ending of the show, giving us some big final reveals surrounding what happens to the main characters and where we might be going in a season 2. Once Maura and the key ends up in Henry's company, he tells his daughter that she's the creator of this simulation along with her husband, and after, she won't have to remember because he will make sure that she continues to remain on this loop forever. He injects her and then attempts to use the key on the pyramid override, and it turns out that nothing happens because we learn that Daniel had changed the code so that Maura wakes up in the very first version of the simulation that they made together. This location looks to be their son's bedroom, and we work out that Daniel made a new override disguised as one of their son's toys and made Maura's engagement ring the key for it, meaning the one that Henry got his hands on is now useless. We also learn from him a bit more about the importance of Maura's brother, who she originally mentioned was the purpose for coming on the Kerberos, knowing that he was stuck here like everyone else. He tells her that once she wakes, she has to stop him, and assures that he'll be next to her when she does. And this brings us to the biggest reveal of them all, with the title of the show appearing to mislead us completely regarding when this actually takes place. Though the show is called 1899, that's only true when it comes to the simulated events on the Kerberos. When Maura gets back to reality, or what we currently think is reality, the year is actually 2099. She wakes up, finds herself strapped onto the wall of a spaceship with a device over her head that seemed to plug her into the simulation. She gets out of it, looks around, and sees that others were strapped in next to her, and those were people she met on the Kerberos, including the Captain Eek. Maura walks around, looks out the window, and we see that they are all in a spaceship up in outer space. And before the show cuts to black, she goes over to the monitor, and when it activates, it reveals that the current date is October 19th, 2099, and tells her that there are 1,423 passengers and 550 crew members currently with her in space. It also reveals the name of the spaceship, which is actually the Prometheus, and then she further gets a message from her brother, who tells her, "Hello sister, welcome to reality." With that, the song Starman by David Bowie starts playing out, making us even more excited for what a second season could contain. It's interesting to point out that Maura does have a triangle tattoo on her neck during these final moments, and as we know, this was the reoccurring symbol etched onto devices, clothing, and other things within the simulation. So could this just be a case of that symbol being heavily present in that simulation we've already witnessed, or is it a hint that we may be in a second simulation set to reveal itself down the line? Something like that would follow what the creators of this show previously did on Dark, and it would also make things very interesting going forward, but at this particular moment, we'll just have to wait and see. There are essentially so many questions that remain, and it's going to be intriguing to see what this will all mean for the ongoing story. We all know that the Kerberos was a simulation that Maura created, but doesn't remember, and now that she's got out, she needs to find Daniel and maybe also find a way to save Elliot. Is there another simulation that we don't know about, and are there things to learn about Maura in this supposed reality? And where is this revealed spaceship really travelling to? We'll have to see, but know that I will be doing a theories and predictions video on Season 2 very soon, so stick around for that, and also look out for my video essay in the coming days, where I'll be giving my extended thoughts on Season 1. But that was my breakdown and analysis for the first season of 1899. Overall, this was a fantastic first season for both Odar and Frisia's new show, and just like Dark, I think they're on track to creating another mind-bending classic that will only get better as the seasons go on. It felt like Westworld, Inception, The Matrix, and Black Mirror all slammed together in a super gripping way, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where they go with it all in Season 2. But to those who have already seen the first season, what are your thoughts on all the events that went down, and where do you think the show is going in Season 2? Let me know down below in the comment section. For more videos on Netflix's 1899, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.